On the evening of October 24th, we flew from Yichang to Beijing. Even though we arrived in the evening, it was easy to see from the traffic that Beijing has continued its enormous growth spurt that was already well underway when we visited for the first time in 1999. At breakfast this morning, Essie and I decided that we would visit Beijing's BackLakes-Pandas-Palaces. Hutan means old neighborhood, and Beijing are many left. The concierge recommended that we take a cab to get to the BackLakes-Pandas-Palaces, but we wanted to take the metro to get as close as we could and then walk from there. Despite the language barrier and the concierge's hand-drawn map, which we weren't sure we understood, Essie and I decided to give it a try. Beijing is the capital of the People's Republic of China, probably about 15 times as large as Washington, D.C. This is what passes for very quaint in Beijing. We've just started our walk when we meet a young man from Scotland who's been here for 7 years. He confirms that this is Beijing's Greenwich Village and a favorite place for artists, writers, and expats to live. There are many restaurants and clubs throughout the area. Many buildings and perhaps some ghosts as well linger from an earlier time before the communists assumed power.
We go in their little streets. You can go through here if you want to, or just go straight and we'll figure out the...
We've now gotten very close to the back lakes, and we're looking at the drum tower, first erected in the time of Kublai Khan. The drum tower, along with the nearby bell tower, are known affectionately and accurately as the city's first skyscrapers. Because of their height as far back as the 13th century, they must have provided wonderful vantage points from which to see the ancient city. A leisurely walk around the back lakes is said to be one of the very best in Beijing. However, I'm still not fully recovered from my careless overindulgence at the last night's banquet on the Yangtze cruise. So ever concerned about old AD, Tony to you, Essie has agreed to forego the walk, and we've taken this tram instead. Our driver is a young man with a very good personality, and like some gondolier in Venice, he's not at all shy about singing to his passengers, but in Mandarin, of course.
What's this? They're swimming.
Prior to 1911, the area around the back lakes was accessible only to the privileged, those with connections to the imperial family. Today it can be enjoyed by anyone seeking a little relaxation in this very busy metropolis. We get off the tram, but only briefly, to get a better peek at this mansion, once owned by a prince of the Qing dynasty.
Hi, sir. 好，有你怎么过得去呀 ？Okay.
Okay. The Back Lakes are man-made. They were dug well over 500 years ago. Their original purpose was to facilitate the barge transport of grain.
脚踏黑土地，头顶一片天，一片天，那个人呐、活在天地间，不图人面留千古，只求回国百年。嘟啦么你啦么嘞，嘟啦么你啦么。OK, thank you.
Though my appetite wasn't great, it was time for lunch. On the nearby small streets, there were many restaurants. We picked Thai food. The restaurant was one of the closest, and already I felt tired from walking. We tried to get a cab back to our hotel, but failed. One driver did stop, but he refused to go in that direction. We took that as further evidence that Beijing is a modern, bustling city. That evening, Hessie and I met Amanda, a journalist working in Beijing, and the daughter of an old friend who relocated to Texas. As you can probably tell, it was a very enjoyable experience. And so our first day in Beijing on our own was good and ended well. Today, we're back on the tourist bus early. We're heading to the Beijing Zoo to, what else? See the pandas. So we leave the panda house of the Beijing Zoo. We're en route to a pearl factory and showroom. Once in the showroom, I took a seat while Hessie got the sales pitch. She bought a very attractive, relatively inexpensive strand of pearls for herself, plus a couple of more as gifts. The sales girl also talked about Shishi, who loved pearls and, as part of her beauty regimen, regularly partook of ground pearls, also human breast milk, during her 47-year reign as the power behind the throne. We've bussed over to the Summer Palace and are now awaiting admittance. The Summer Palace comprises roughly 770 acres. Kunming Lake accounts for more than 2/3 of the acreage. The Summer Palace was home to many rulers of China. from the Qing dynasty, Imperial China's last. Qi Qing's son, an incompetent emperor, sent her to live at the Summer Palace in a futile attempt to keep her out of politics. When her son died prematurely, Qi Qing solidified her grip on power, running the country from the Summer Palace. In 1912, 4 years after the death of Shi Qi, Sun Yat-sen led a revolution which toppled the Qing dynasty. China became a republic, and the Summer Palace was for the first time open to the public.
The scale, and the box screws. It used to be a pair. Behind the tower. The whole, they're no man, and the emperor was the only man. So she was that 6, 7, almost 8 feet. Yes. Chinese.
怎么样？
是吧？可以拍电影了。
没事，乱的照不上。让你3个人的，300块钱。
40块钱，放个东西说，放个一个东西，一个东西嘛。
This is a 100-plus-year-old legend showing highlights of the Summer Palace. Basically, we just kept walking around the grounds, trying to get our bearings, soaking up the ambiance, until it was time for lunch. Our lunch was quote-unquote imperial style and served to us in a private dining room by pretty girls in period costume. And it was free, included in our tour, so who could complain? After lunch, we headed back to the lakeside, where we were going to be treated to a boat ride. First, we'll walk around and look some more.
And in 1886, when it was restored. Yeah, right. Okay, so front. And with so many continents. And of course they have many female servants. Yeah, limestone. Very soft. And they're all hard. And this is the lowest. It's actually the waterfront, they're all connected. And there's pretty.
So finally, we're in a dragon boat riding on Kunming Lake. As perhaps you've noticed, we've seen very little direct sunlight during our short stay in Beijing. Despite the government's efforts to improve air quality for the 2008 Olympics, smog remains a problem here and in all the other Chinese cities that we have visited. Very shortly, we'll be busing back to the center of Beijing to see Tiananmen Square and the Forbidden City. So the buses let us off, and very shortly we'll be entering Tiananmen Square, said to be large enough to accommodate upwards of 300,000 Chinese cheering at a political rally, of which there have been many over the years. 1989 was also the site of the student pro-democracy riots. Subsequent to that, Tiananmen Square was restored and renovated in time for the 1999 celebration of the Communists being in power for 50 years. In 1999, Hesse and I happened to be in Beijing a few months prior to the formal reopening of the square. Parts of the square were blocked off. There were few people around. As you can see, on this day, the scene is quite different.
Okay. Okay? 2 for 5 you want? Yes, 2 for 5. Wooden bread. 2 for 5?
所有小朋友看这里，看看小眼睛旁边的老师这里啊。来，1、2、3、接。好，再叫一下，我数1、2、3。2、3、接。抓的慢35，我们先来。
We are now making our way over to the Forbidden City, according to the government, the most visited tourist attraction in China. It's a couple of blocks away, contiguous to Tiananmen Square.
Well, it's sort of sweet as a little sofa. Ridiculous size. It's a shame you can't watch.
It's just like walking through a amusement park.
照顾啊！抓的慢35，我们先来。
Main colors. One is the yellow, one is the red.
Our guide Frank has been giving us some background information about the Forbidden City. It was once known as the Imperial City. It was home to 24 emperors from the Ming and Qing dynasties. The city was constructed in the early 1400s of the Common Era. The color red, which is used prominently, signifies happiness. Yellow, the color of some of the roofs, could only be used by royalty. One building has a black roof. Black signified water. The buildings are constructed of wood, covered with ceramics and stone. Large urns filled with water were strategically placed for firefighting. With 138 acres, the Forbidden City was the largest imperial palace in the world. Only 3 of the buildings are original. All the rest were destroyed by fire or ransacked over the years. A major renovation is underway and is not scheduled for completion until the year 2020. At the time of our visit, only 30% of the Forbidden City was open to the public. We're heading across the outer court to the Hall of Supreme Harmony. It was used for celebrations such as the enthronement of emperors and royal weddings. The hall is reached by several tiers of steps. If you look carefully, you will see in the center a marble carriageway that can only be used by the emperor. The top of the roof is about 300 feet above the courtyard. As we walk through the Forbidden City, we'll continue to point out well-known structures and artifacts that we recognize. But given our limited time here, our main focus will be to absorb as much as we can of the ambiance of an imperial China from ages gone by. We suggest that you do the same.
Banquet hall. Dalai Lama was there. The 5th, the 6th, they travel. It took maybe 1 year, and they were invited to come to China and treat a big, nice dinner, by the Chinese emperor. They were used as like the warehouses or the office buildings for the government official or the interpreter for Chinese emperors, but now they turn them into exhibitions. Various level of examination, and then finally they were qualified to come here and then take the examination inside that building, which was given by the emperor. Is the bottom right.
Why are you looking at me again?
No. I didn't want to catch you. I didn't want to catch you. And especially
是说，这不是的。
As indicated by the graphic, we'll soon be exiting the Forbidden City via the Gate of Heavenly Purity, but not before we pass through the very distinctive Imperial Gardens. So, a few last pictures and we'll be leaving the Forbidden City and heading outside looking for our bus. Our China and How adventure is coming to an end. Except for off-camera things such as the goodbyes, and a special thanks to Frank, our outstanding guide and tour coordinator. And for those of you, our viewers, Hessie and I certainly hope you enjoyed and found interesting what we had to share. Since we didn't get to the Great Wall this time, perhaps some of you would like to see a few pictures from our last trip, which was back in 1999. Since then, we've changed almost as much as Beijing has, but I think the Great Wall has probably stayed very much the same. Well, it's just about time for us to go. Perhaps you can join us again soon in another special place. Certainly hope so.